Hello, everyone. My name is Miceli, and I'm the Director of Hospitality and Restaurant Management at the Institute of Culinary Education. Welcome to this installment of our guest lecture series. As a reminder, this demonstration is being broadcast, so if you are watching online, please post your questions to the YouTube chat. And for our students and staff here today, please wait for us to pass around the microphone so we can hear all your questions. Our goal in this series of demos and lectures is to highlight culinary excellence of contemporary chefs and culinary entrepreneurs. In the last few months, we have hosted Chef Michael Cimarusti of the Michelin-starred Providence, Chef Stephanie Izard of The Girl and the Goat, Chef Meg Bickford of the historic Commander's Palace in New Orleans, and Chef Nancy Silverton of the Michelin-starred Osteria Mozza. In 2002, Eddie founded FE Design and Consulting to help hospitality businesses get their doors open, providing a variety of services for hospitality from architectural, land use, kitchen design. Today, Eddie is the president of Art Share LA, supporting emerging artists in the community he grew up in. He continues to advocate for independent food and beverage businesses as a co-founder of the Independent Hospitality Coalition. Eddie lives in downtown LA, serving as executive director of IHC and living his values in preserving arts and culture in LA. Please join me in welcoming Eddie Navarrette.
Thank you, Michelle. So great to see all you guys. I don't really know you that well, but I would like to, by the end of this, we'll obviously have some questions that you can ask me. They call me Fast Eddie. I got that name from playing music, actually, which is kind of my background. As we talked about Art Share LA, I came from the area of Highland Park, Koreatown, Van Nuys, Reseda, Arts District, in fact, before it was the Arts District. And I found in that life, artists being who I was and what I wanted to support as I came to the crossroads of being a kitchen designer. Because I find all of you all and the people that I serve just as much of artists as I was as a musician. And still intend to be an artist until the day that I die. But now I have this business. It's called FE Design and Consulting. And it was there, like Michelle elegantly had presented me. I help people open up restaurants. That's the easiest way that I can explain this. I help people with any question that they may have when they're trying to get their doors open, when somebody doesn't have the answer. Anything from they're asking me to put this sheer wall up for my building permit or my construction project, or do I need to have a grease interceptor, or how much power do I need, or is this space good enough to have a restaurant? I'm usually the person that they call. I'm also part of, I gave you the very limited introduction. I'm actually part of the City of West Hollywood Business Task Force. I'm part of the City of LA Mayor's Business Task Force. I also work with the County of Los Angeles on trying to help small businesses being preserved. My work and who I am every day, my values is to support this industry and to do what I can to sustain it and to make officials be aware of the challenges that the small business person goes through. But all of that work comes from me as FE Design. From this little guy over here. And Chinatown was my first office. And then I came into Little Tokyo, where I've been for about 10 years now. Oh, I'm back up. So FE Design, we do kitchen design work. We do alcohol licensing. We do architecture for restaurants. We do consulting. We do preliminary research for a location that you may be considering if you're opening up a restaurant. We do land use services. Land use is planning applications in case you have to have some sort of zoning authorization because your city requires it because they are the city. We help you with all of those things. We help people have different departments talk to each other and be in the same room and make sure that we're all on the same timeline. So overall consulting is people hire me for. I work with a series of different types of customers, everything from the coffee geeks to the Michelin star, tasting menu folks, to the quick service, pizza places, and everything in between. My customers range from Prince Street Pizza to Prime Pizza, all the pizza places. We'll just throw in there. I met my current girlfriend of 7 years, almost now, all day baby, and here's looking at you, Lynn Taw, from designing her restaurant. I worked with Pizza Palace. I've worked with Suzanne Go, and almost a lot of the people that you see here on this wall: Curtis Stone, Susan Finnegar, Tim Hollingsworth. I think there's a lot of them that are here, yeah, but yes. Definitely worked with so many of them. This is my life, and this is what I do. It is my commitment to my life. I also have Independent Hospitality Coalition. So we started this in April of 2020. And this was to help businesses decipher the requirements during the pandemic for how you can run a restaurant. What were and let me dive into that deeper. Specifically, health regulations were coming out like nobody's business, faster than the seasons. And inspectors were getting the same information as the public, as the operators were getting, as they were. At the same time we were getting these regulations, and no one understood what those regulations were. So we tried to have some sort of coordination, some sort of liaison between the industry and the health department and the city, who all wanted to help people, they just didn't know how. So IHC was founded, and we provide community support and advocacy for the independent restaurant community. What is independent restaurants? Independent restaurants is not Buffalo Wild Wings. Okay, we are anything but that. We buy our chicken usually from something that's much more expensive. We can't get wings for 49 cents. You use our wings, cost a lot more. Businesses, that is. We are the people that occupy storefronts in our most dearest of communities. We are Union Restaurant. We are Howlin' Ray's, one of my customers as well. All Day Baby. We are Cha 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 Lounge, Death and Company. These are all businesses that aren't out there to occupy on a national level, en masse. They are there because they have a craft, they have a care, they have an artistry that they want to maintain in all of their projects, and so we're there to help support them. I'll leave that there. Okay, that was my team. I've had plenty of teams since then. But about half of them are still with me. A lot of them from the pandemic have kind of moved on, and it's kind of, we're operating in kind of a new way now. I still have one of my staff members. She works from China to this day. So she still works remotely, which is fascinating. This is what I wanted to give you all as kind of the educational piece of me being up here, not just to talk about who I am. But how many of you guys are looking to open up a restaurant one day? Okay, that's a lot of you. Okay, all right. So there are some fundamentals that you should know about that I tell any person that calls me when they want to open a restaurant, no matter where they're from. I have customers from Russia right now, from Korea right now. Rosa, my assistant in the back. Let's give it up for Rosa. She has to field all the calls from different people who call me every day, again from Russia, from Korea, from Latin America descent. And, we have to do our best to serve them and speak the language that we may actually not know. But the first thing that I tell anybody is, or ask them is, have you signed a lease yet? When they tell me yes, then I know how to address them. When they tell me no, then I say, let's talk about your site selection. We need to know what the place is permitted as. Not what you're getting put on the lease, not what your broker told you, but what is on the actual permit. You need to start there. Because if it doesn't exist on paper, then it probably doesn't exist. What can be really confusing is I've seen a lot of restaurants where they have a health permit for maybe 10 years, 20 years at times, but they don't have a city permit, right? So the health department permit only takes you so far. Actually, you want to have a safeguard in making sure that the Department of Building and Safety has on record that the establishment that you are leasing is in fact the use that you intend on having there, right? So if it's a bakery and you want to do steak, you may want to revisit that and make sure that steak is going to be okay with the city, even though it was, a different type of use. If it was a coffee place and it says coffee shop on the permits, but you want to do a service restaurant, then you really want to revisit, will the city actually look at it as that same type of use? Zoning, you want to make sure that you have a good awareness of what the zoning allows for. There are many different degrees of commercial zones, of manufacturing zones. Sometimes there are residential zones that allow some commercial zones. It's really difficult to navigate your path to knowing if your place is zoned correctly. And particular zoning will outline things that will maybe be easier for you to have an alcohol license, right? So that's something for you to be aware of too. Certain zones have like an over-the-counter alcohol licensing process if you're in a particular city, whereas other cities may not. Or even if you're in the same city, there might be just if you go into a different, across the street, those laws can significantly change. So just because you've spoken to your friend who owns a restaurant across the street and they got a free pass, doesn't mean that you are. It gets that specific. So you really want to do your homework on this. Due diligence is something that I cannot stress enough. The more that you go into knowing all of the right permits, the better. I'll tell you a story about Lin Ta of All Day Baby. When they asked me about opening up a restaurant, and I told them that this place had terrible permits, and even though it was operating for about 10 years in Silver Lake, half of it was legal, the other of it wasn't. They never finished their permits because in the city of LA, things are so large. I think it's one of the second biggest cities in the US. There's a lot of disconnect on how things work. All right, there's a lot of misrepresentation, of course, too. We're also in the biggest county in the US, so you have a lot of that going against you as well. Not to mention all the languages that we speak here in California or in the city of LA alone. But I'm like, these permits are awful. I can make it happen. We can play with all the parking requirements and all the zoning, and I can do what I have to do. We ended up having to put the bar area. I'm not sure if you've been there in Silver Lake. Anyone been to Silver Lake? You guys know about this restaurant, NDB? Yeah, okay. So we have a bar on the side, and we had to leave the storefront open because we had to call it a patio so that we can get around the parking. Like we had to do all these tricks to make it happen. I mean, that's what I do every day. But I told her it was going to be really difficult for us to do it here. But I'm like, are you sure you want this? And she said, yes, I want it. I'm like, well, I'm going to do it for you. And I did it. And 2 years later, we got it open. We faced so many challenges in there. One of the challenges was, those custom suites that you have that look really nice. You probably have some downstairs right now, right? Where all the stainless steel is connected to your cooking appliances, right? So your deep fryer and your grill and everything is like a suite, right? It looks really nice. Probably in Curtis Stone's restaurants. Tim Hollingsworth's restaurants probably too. But the city would not sign off on it because they were not familiar with that style. And it wasn't that it was the city, it was one inspector. Many of those suites had been approved before, but it was just this one inspector that gave us such a hard time. And we had to go through so many challenges in getting that thing open. These are just the realities of when people want to open up a restaurant that I want you all to be aware of. You never really know what's going to come up, but the more that you can do your due diligence in the beginning, you're going to find out so much things will be easier for you. And again, do not believe the broker. They know nothing. They don't go to school for these things. They don't teach. I actually went to the same school that they did because I wanted to find out where this source of misinformation was coming from. And I was shocked to hear the person that was teaching me did not know the difference between what we call a certificate of occupancy and a conditional use permit. So they all learned the wrong information from the beginning. but their main goal is to lease you a restaurant. So please be careful. Things like this, like utility infrastructure, are vital as well. So when you go into a restaurant, one of the main things that we find problematic for existing buildings is not having enough electrical. Right? We do not have the infrastructure for existing buildings that we need for restaurants. We need about 200 amps, single phase at minimum. Triple phase is usually the better way that you're looking for. So when you're going to the lease negotiations, you want to make sure that the owner is providing you with at least 200 amps. Oftentimes, people will just sign leases, they'll go into this, and then we'll have to upgrade the building, and this can take up to another 2 years on its own for the upgrade, because Los Angeles County does not really have that infrastructure yet. Department of Water and Power is different from Edison. They have different jurisdictions. Things go a little bit faster, but at the end of the day, these are huge challenges if you're trying to open up a restaurant. So you want to know what the electrical is by a professional. Either an electrician should be able to tell you what this is, or you can hire someone like me to help you, or you can get an electrical engineer to help you, but do not trust the broker. Okay, ADA compliance is a very large factor that we all deal with if you have a restaurant currently, or if you're opening a new one. The first thing is you need to make sure that when you're opening up a place that you provide accessibility. You know, no one likes to be discriminated, right? We all want to be treated equal. And so we have to have those things in place. I know it's a challenge. I know sometimes it may, you know, it can mess up with your bar design, and the designers don't like it. Screw the designers, you guys. we need to treat everyone as equal, and we have to provide these accommodations for them. And it will save you in the future, because oftentimes a lot of businesses suffer from lawsuits. Even if you get someone like me to get you around the requirements because of X, Y, and Z, things that are out there, you're still open to a civil lawsuit for not being compliant. And there are many predatory attorneys out there that look for businesses that are non-compliant. And they feast on independent restaurant owners, cafe owners, whatever it may be, small businesses in general, who they know cannot defend themselves and end up having to settle. It ends up costing about $10,000 on average for them to hire an attorney to fill out the paperwork, to go through the process, so that they can have, settle with an attorney. And they do this for your website. If your website is not compliant, they will sue you. So it's something you have to watch out for. And you can change your website in about a day. Once you get the lawsuit and you want to change it and you go, but I changed it now, it's fixed. It's too late. You have to settle for that lawsuit about $10,000 out. And when you're a small business, when you're a restaurant, that's a lot of money. You know, this morning, All Day Baby got broken into again. Wow. We got broken into actually 10 days before the LA Marathon. LA Marathon goes right through Sunset, and we were, and there were a bunch of people sitting outside and, you know, setting up and stuff. And throughout the morning at midnight, it happened while they were out there. While there were tons of people out there, but they broke in through our takeout window the same day as the marathon. And we ended up having, luckily, I know people who could help with getting things done fast enough. But, you know, amongst all the things that we deal with as restaurant owners, lawsuits are not fun to deal with, that's for sure. And they can take you down. Oftentimes, restaurant people are like, we're just waiting for our number to come up before they get to us. We're done, we're out of this game. But I'm going to regress from being so dismal. Because, you know, if you prepare your site and you have the ADA accommodations in your place, if you have the proper training when it comes to, you know, staff and these types of things in your workplace, you're gonna be a lot better off. So, you know, taking the time, learning from a wonderful establishment like ICE, I feel like, I'm sorry, Institute of Culinary Education, that sounds horrible. You are going to, you're on your road to success. So you're doing the right things. So this is my favorite slide. I'm in here too. So these are what I call the usual suspects. And so I did this presentation before the pandemic. It's probably part of the same one that I brought last time I was here. And it hasn't changed. And so the reason that I have these characters that are here is because when you're going through the opening of a restaurant, because some of you might just take over an existing establishment, you may not have to worry about all of these people, but you may have to worry about maybe just one of them or two of them, right? But it's important that you know who they are, because at some point they may all have to communicate with not only you, but with each other. And that is the hardest part of all of this, right? People working together who are not on the same team. They have their own teams and they have to work together. The broker, who I've already spoken very highly of, the architect has a very distinct personality and character. Very similar to the one on the far right, which is, well, let's take out the kitchen designer, the interior designer. Like for Pizza Palace, we had me, and then we also had an interior designer. I was a kitchen designer. I also helped with being this person too, and I was this person. I was this person. This person. I just was not this person or that person. But because I wear many hats, and I can do most things for people in this process. But the designer and the architects all have a special interest. We all have an interest. You guys have an interest of opening your establishment. They have an interest of what it's going to look like and how many magazines are they going to be on the cover of, right? But do they care about operations? Not as much. I'll never forget working with a particular chef, and sous chef is like, Eddie, I've worked with this architect before. I need you to get into a bare knuckle fist fight with this architect to stand for what we need to have in our kitchen, please. And I'll never forget those words, because there is always that battle between, at least for me as a kitchen designer or someone that is familiar with operations, and what an interior designer may want. We all want different things. We all have to work together to get on the same page. Oftentimes, the people that are trying to open up, to have the dreams to open up a restaurant, get caught in the middle. But we all have to be aware of the characteristics of these people. Contractors, they are just contractors. I'd say they would speak for themselves. You probably all have worked with them at some point in your life. Engineers are very rigid. They're very black and white. Any engineers in the room before I go on about this? Okay, good. They're very rigid. They're very black and white. Some are nice. Don't get me wrong. Pleasant people, but they like to kind of just do their job. They're not very creative people, so they're not really open to solutions. They see the code book and they tell you how it has to work to code, right? I don't work that way. But I understand them, and that's how we get there, right? Consultant, that's me. I'm just perfect in every way. So I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, I do a lot of political relations work. I'm working with the state legislature right now, and I have to bridge the gaps between all these people. And it's important that you have people on your team that can do that. That mediation between the different folks is essential. I am not trained. I just kind of learn on my own. But to have that kind of expertise in your team is going to be really helpful, so that people can really understand each other moving through. And if that's you, then that's great. You got a leg up. Expediter, there are people that will just hang out in the city and just take plans from point A to point B to get approvals. It's a very weird thing. I kind of do it sometimes too for people, but it's really not that inspiring of work. So it's like, is this really your day job? But this is what they do, and they're good at it because they know people at the city, and they can get the plans approved, and they know certain things. But they don't know operations, and they don't know engineering, and they don't know architecture, and they don't know a lot of things. The licensed broker picture very much speaks for itself, right? These guys are sharks. I mean, they will call you if you're closing a restaurant, and they will just like hound you, many of them trying to get your license so they can sell it. And if you're a new business, they will do the same. They will ask you if you want to buy a license, or if you enter into what we call in California, we have the liquor lottery, right? Where you can enter into a lottery to get a license. We can talk about that if you're interested later. But if you don't win, they have your number, and they will call you over and over again. and it's super annoying, and they look just like that. So I'm gonna move on. So I have this kind of like workflow chart on like how permitting works, right? I think it's kind of hard to see, but it's ultimately, we do a design, we get it ready. There's whatever, and I'll tell you what that process looks like later on. We submit plans to the departments. We get the plans approved, and then we go through inspections, and then you're open, right? That's kind of like what this looks like. There's some pictures of me. Okay, so this is much easier to see. So phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Hire the development team, right? You got to get your team together. All those horrible folks that you saw, the usual suspects, you want to get them, together, figure out who's going to be doing what and all the things. If you don't know who those people are, then you really should try to bring someone on board to help you with those things. Because if you lose a month, that's a month's in rent, and that can really hurt a business depending on what your rent is. My brother, any of you guys familiar with the place El Tropical, Cafe Tropical? Yep. Okay. You obviously are from Silver Lake, right? Or in that area. That's okay. It's been in the neighborhood for maybe about 40, 50 years now. Institution, little Cuban cafe. But my brother opened it up again. I tried to talk him out of it, but he insisted on going through it. I don't know why I was telling you about that. But let me go back to these little colors here and what they mean. So phase 1, hire a development team. You got to have all those folks a part of who are going to be working together on your project. You have to come up with some sort of like conceptual design. Where's the counter going to go? Where the restroom is going to go? How do you get in the spot? Customers. No offense to myself, I am a customer too. We need to be directed. We need to be given. And we don't want to look like we don't know what we're doing, right? You have to direct us into a space to get us to where we need to go so that we can have a good experience. And so we have to come up with that overall design, and then we work backwards from there, right? Then we'll start working on, okay, this has to be the code, and that has to go here, we need the kitchen to be bigger, but you have to know where the entrance is, you have to know where the exits are, restrooms, kitchen, etc. Phase 2, plan, review, permitting. Have the timelines here in the last part, construction and inspections. Any new build for a restaurant, you're looking at around 6 to 12 months, no matter what. So just make sure you know that. It does not take 3 months. It does not take 6 months. If you're taking over an existing place, maybe the time could be cut down. But you will be looking at significant numbers when you're going through the process. Again, don't believe the brokers. That's enough, I think, for you guys when it comes to like this presentation stuff. I'm not a big presenter guy. I'm more of like a one-on-one. I want to answer your questions. I want to hear from you guys. I want Michelle to ask great questions. And thank you for your time. I hope that this was educational for you. And I'm going to sit down now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eddie. That was wonderful. That was a great kind of view of what that process looks like, right? Can you tell us, that looked so kind of seamless, what are the hiccups that you come across more often for somebody opening a small business, whether it be a full build out or taking over an existing location?
It's always the permits were not looked at, and we're having to be stuck with holding the bag of what was not done before. And when the restaurant person or cafe or baker or whoever it is or coffee person comes to me with this vision, when they thought things were going to be much easier, it's not easy. And they didn't raise enough capital to go through the process of what they intended on it being much easier for. And we have to work backwards, and we're already against the clock. So I think that would be the biggest thing. As I spoke about the infrastructure, that electrical thing is a real problem. And unfortunately, our electrical grid is not available to assist us in these areas. I'm sure you've heard about even our electrically charged cars. We don't have enough of those ports. I mean, I drive a Prius, so I don't know. I mean, I still use gas, but like, I can't imagine how difficult it must be if you have an electrically charged car and not having those resources. As we may be moving into maybe more electrically used utilities or appliances, I just hope and pray that we have that infrastructure so this will all change in the future. But currently, that's a really big one. Knowing things like where the interceptor goes, if you need to have a grease interceptor, those are big challenges. But usually, you know, just not having the right team with you. I have a really nice lady who's opening a restaurant right now in Venice, and gave her a contract to do some work for her. She ended up hiring somebody else, and a year went by, and she called me back. She's like, Eddie, things aren't really moving very fast. Can you like help me? What do we have to do? And it was amazed on how many things hadn't been started yet, and how far back she was because she just went with somebody who didn't have the experience. So how can you know if you're hiring the right person? Try to do it less with just like how you feel about the person, but really do some homework on them too. I mean, this is going to be your life for at least the next 5 years, 3 years, or whatever it is that you're going to dedicate your life to. And once you get into this community, it's hard to get out of it. You know, it's family for us. This community is so tight when it comes to, you know, being a creative in this community. I just don't see a lot of people ever really coming out of it. They're kind of in it for life, it seems. But you know, this is something that you can that can be very difficult in your life, or it can be much easier. And if you just spend some time going to who their customers were before and asking them, how was your experience with them? What should they improve on? What were you concerned about? Things like this is going to go a long ways in the decision-making process. So less about you like the person and more about what did their customers say about them.
That's a good point for them to pay attention to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned Pisa Palace in Silver Lake. So those of you that may or may not know, Avish is a alumni of the Institute of Culinary Education in the culinary management program. And he literally took his business plan that he developed through this program and turned it into Pisa Palace, and had Eddie as a consultant to help him through that process, which is really a great thing. So can you tell us about how that experience was for you working with Avish through his business plan and turning it into an actual business?
When I meet people for the first time, I never know who they are or where they went to school or who they know. I just know when they have an idea, and if it's something that I want to be a part of, I'm like, this sounds really cool. And so when I heard of his concept, I mean, as crazy as it was, I was like, we need this in Los Angeles. Please do this.
Tell them what the concept is for those of them.
Well, I hope I'm saying this the correct way, but pizza with Indian food collaboration, fusion.
Yeah.
Can we say fusion anymore? I don't know.
With the sports bar theme.
Oh yeah, with the sports bar theme.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, very interesting.
And you know, just such a nice guy. And you know, he was there with his family, and they were all like they all had me around. Like I was literally just sitting around a bunch of them, and they're all like, "So tell me about you. What can you do for us?" And I was really intimidated, but I really like this concept, and we moved forward with it. It's in a multi-story building. So if some of you, I think you had been there. It's in a hotel or like a motel.
A motel.
All right. And so multi-level buildings are really difficult for us because we have to exhaust the hood somehow. And how do you get it up to, you know, many levels? We deal with this in downtown LA or in high rises. So we had that challenge. The ceiling is not high enough either, so we can't do it. It's very much, the odds are against us on where and how many hoods we can put in there. So we went through that process. Luckily, there was enough power. There's a garage underneath, so you know, different dynamics on how we had to utilize the infrastructure there. But we were going through the pandemic through that time, and so we really had to shift gears often. I mean, everything stopped at that time. We all just went home. And the contractors didn't know how they were going to be working. We all had to refigure things out. So the project got delayed a significant amount. We found out that the contractors ended up moving a shear wall for a multi-level building without telling us.
Mm.
And when we came back from the initial shock of the pandemic and everyone's like, okay, we're starting to work again, here we found this wall being moved, and we were like, this is a problem. So we had to go back to the city and resubmit the plans. And but this is not the first time that a contractor has moved a shear wall at one of our projects. Sometimes these contractors, they just kind of go off on their own and nobody's managing them. And then we find out later on when it's a problem, because the contractor likes to think that it was okay because they know engineering more than an engineer. In any case, we had to fix it, and it delayed the project even longer, not only because it was a pandemic, but it was also going through plan check, which is a very new process at that time during the pandemic as well. We're still trying to figure out how we do permitting in this kind of new way. So that was a huge challenge. But once we got there, thankfully it was a success. And I would have never known from that first time that I met him that we would have been where we are now. And I was opening another location next door.
Yeah, he's opening another location. And you literally cannot get a reservation there for months. It's a very, very difficult reservation. So if you get one, go. It's really, really good. The food's amazing, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's
Definitely.
amazing experience. And they have a fantastic cocktail program. So can you tell them a little bit about the process for getting the liquor license? And you mentioned the lottery. We actually got our liquor license here at the Institute of Culinary Education through a lottery. So
yay.
tell them a little bit about that process.
Okay, so any time that you get an alcohol license in the state of California, you have to go through two different jurisdictions. One is the city that you're in, right? City of Pasadena, city of LA, and they usually have some sort of planning, or we call it land use application, for you to get that authorization. It's famously called conditional use permit, or CUP, right? That's the thing that the brokers understand all the time. This is what we also call an entitlement. So when you have a property and we like to use that word in planning world about what your property is allowed for. Your property could be allowed to have alcohol service on there. And in that entitlement, it will outline what you can do within the operations of your alcohol license. So it could be things like it's only in conjunction with the school, or it could only be for a limited amount of people in your dining room, or you can only have so much patio, or the hours of operation, and these sorts of things. We call this the conditions of approval, right? So this is what you're going to have with the local city that you're working with. This process can take anywhere from a month to maybe a year and a half. It really depends. Once you go through this process of an entitlement, once you go through the process of an entitlement, it's appealable, where it could go through a much higher level of jurisdiction and review, and it can drag on if you don't make friends with your neighbors, and that sort of thing. So, these processes, usually that's when you'll have the expediter, or again, a consultant or someone like me, who will help in that process and will help with mediation between your neighbors and that sort of thing. So the process can be much easier. Again, this is just the city process, right? So I'm going to put that on the shelf over here. Then you have the other processes with the state alcoholic beverage control. They also will give you conditions of approval. When you start the license process, you can get different types of licenses, right? Well, there's something like 99, almost 100 different types of licenses out there that you can get. Everything from wine growers to breweries to music venues, which we ended up getting added on during the pandemic. The most famous ones for restaurants is the Type 47, which is a full liquor license in conjunction with the restaurant use. And then a 41, which is beer and wine in conjunction with the restaurant use. There are several other ones that we could talk about if you're so interested. But those licenses, beer and wine, 41 license, you can buy it straight from the ABC. It's about $1,500, something like that. You have to go through the process of getting a new license there, which will take anywhere from 6 months to a year. That process is also appealable, so it can drag on to maybe 2 years, 2.5 years. Nikki Nakayama from NNACA, her license, the city process was done in less than a year, but the ABC license took almost 2 years. And Nikki's a very nice lady. Like, who would want to hurt Nikki? But the neighbors were just, very concerned about alcohol, and they just kind of had this, they exercised their right as a constituent to appeal the application with the state, and the state does not have the infrastructure to handle these things, and so it just took a very long time for us to get it issued. So the 41 license is something, again, you can buy straight from the ABC. Now, the type 47 license, which is full liquor, that is something that you can get through what we call the priority drawing, or more famously, the lottery, right? So the state ABC allows for 25 licenses to be won in each county once a year, right? The drawing is held, I think sometime, the deadline's in September, and then the drawing is held sometime in October, something like that, right? So the deadline to submit, September, drawing, October, something like that, every year. So you can enter into that drawing. It's about maybe $15,000. No, I'm sorry, maybe like $20,000 now. If you don't win, you get your money back, right? But a lot of people have won that I know. And then there's a second priority drawing, which is called the intercounty license transfer, which is another 25 licenses that you can be eligible to buy from a different county. So why is that important? Because licenses in different counties are not as much as they are in Los Angeles County. Los Angeles County right now, the market value for a license is around $150,000. So if you win that first priority drawing, you've saved yourself a significant amount of money in buying a license. But you can also, again, do this second priority drawing process and buy a license from a different county, San Bernardino County, San Diego County, where they're much cheaper, and you can save on costs that way too. A different county license might be somewhere around $30,000 or $40,000, right? So significantly cheaper. And so how much does it cost for you to enter this second priority drawing? About maybe $8,000, something like that. So when you enter into the priority drawing, usually we'll tell people, enter into both of them. And then if you have that capital, and you will get it back if you don't win. Right, so those are the ways that you do it. You have to go through both of those processes. We recommend that you go through them in parallel, because who's got time to wait all that for those things to happen one after the other? So that's what we do.
Excellent. That's good information, right? Yeah. How about taking over an existing liquor license from a location? How does that work?
Yeah, so those processes are much easier because they're not appealable. You don't have to worry about somebody protesting the license if you take it over. It's something that's very straightforward with some paperwork, and it takes about 3 months for it to finish. So that process is what we recommend whenever there's a license that's already there. When there is a type 47 license involved and you're taking it over, in most cases, the prior owner is selling it to you, right? So it's going to be part of the purchase price. So in that, there will be a series of documents that you have to have signed, and even the broker, or when you set up an escrow account for the purchase of the restaurant, the license will be in there too. So that will all be part of that transfer process. But we always recommend going through that instead of any new license, because in most cases, and again, in most cases, it's not in all cases, that's why you want to do the due diligence, the entitlement, you remember that first process on the shelf that I was talking about, is already there. So you don't want to have to go through that again, right? So that has value to it already. Even if you're just buying a type 41 license for beer and wine, even though it's not $150,000, it still has value because your city entitlement is already with that property.
Interesting. You also mentioned making friends with your neighbors, right? To help with that appeal process. Can you give us any insight on how to do that the right way with the liquor license?
Well, I think the general rule of thumb, everybody, like what I have learned, and I even learned from my assistant in the back there, is you attract a lot more flies with honey than you do vinegar. right?
So true.
It never pays to be an asshole. You know, sorry, I cussed, but you know, really to put it so blunt, I mean, and it's hard when you're a business owner because you're under a lot of pressure, you're under a lot of stress, but you know, you're not going to be an inspiring person, and no one's going to want to help you if you're that person. So as much patience as it might take, and as many indifferences as you may have with your neighbor, if we don't move towards a world of love and understanding, we're never going to get there. And so that means, you know, being friends with your neighbors, because it will help you a lot more than it will hurt you. That's for sure.
Excellent. Questions? Oh, we have several over here. We'll get the mic over here to you.
Who had a question?
Right here, and then we'll go.
So I think I speak for a lot of people here who raised their hands earlier when they stated by doing so that they wanted to open up a restaurant in the future. What are the common compromises that owners have to kind of deal with when they come to work with you? Those compromises on their vision. What are the common compromises that you see?
Cooking outside. Cooking outside is highly regulated. That's a big one. I think expanding their kitchen from their home. That's something that's very difficult. It's very regulated. Wholesale versus retail. That's something that I find being problematic. So what is the difference between wholesale and retail? Retail is direct to consumer, where wholesale is you're not only doing direct to consumer, but you're also selling to Whole Foods. So they carry your product too. Those things can be real challenges because sometimes the kitchen is not set up for wholesale production. And so we end up having to go through that process. So those are some of, I think, the most typical of things. But when it comes to open flame cooking, we can do it, at least for now. And I mean, people come to me for like anything from like dog nightclubs to, you know, we did axe throwing. Obviously, that's a thing now. And all the like crazy ideas that come out. In most cases, we can get it. We can make it happen. And it's actually really inspiring to me when I have someone that has a crazy idea. And so bring it on. Yeah.
Love it.
So earlier you said when, you know, hiring a consulting firm to do our due diligence and do our own homework, talk to past people who have hired so-called consulting firms. I know you're the for sure bet to go with, but what are other important key aspects that I should be on the lookout for rather than just hearing someone's word of mouth?
Many words of mouth, I would say. I think, yeah, it's you never know what that relationship with that person may be. They may have something horrible to say. I'm sure there's people that have some horrible things to say about me. You know,
No.
I know, right? But yeah, no, you know, I'm not perfect, and I have failed in my life. So I think really to get an overall consensus of that person and, you know, what they think about them, even if they've worked in the city before, maybe and ask someone at the city, hey, have you worked with this person before? They might be like, oh, please do not work with that. Like, that's valid.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, all data is good, right? All feedback is good for you to make an educated decision on things. I mean, I would say even going to ask questions about, hey, can you give me some numbers of the contractors that you've worked with before? You know, if you're talking about working with a particular architect or a designer or a consultant or whoever it is, because doing that extra work and asking those questions in the beginning, especially when you're hiring someone that's going to be such an impactful component in your team, I think it's worth the time spent. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a boring question, but I think you get boring questions a lot.
Okay. Yeah, seriously.
So it's about parking. That's a challenge in LA. So if you're opening a restaurant or taking over an existing restaurant and parking is limited, like what if this is a client for you? Like, what's your approach? Like, should they do valet? Should they talk to neighbors? Like, how do you deal with the parking challenge?
So most major cities in California have all moved towards a different way of our ongoing climate change solutions. And one of them is eliminating parking. Sacramento has eliminated parking. San Francisco has eliminated parking. San Diego has eliminated parking to help small businesses and to preserve our climate change. So we are trying to push LA into going in that direction too. Currently, we have AB 2097, which is Laura Friedman, who's running for Congress right now. She's very, pro-environment, and it comes from the transportation sector. And so we are going towards removing parking. And so AB 2097 actually prohibits what we call local jurisdictions, which means cities, from requiring parking for any new building or business within half-mile of a major transit system. So what's a major transit system? It could be anywhere where buses intersect with each other, and it could be during rush hour every 15 minutes. And so there are maps out there for AB 2097 to see if it's in your area or not. So I would look at that. That's one way. Also, in the city of Los Angeles, we have the emergency planning ordinance, where it has also does not require any parking for any new restaurant. We also have the new alfresco ordinance, which I was a part of in writing and advocating for, which allows you to eliminate 100% of your parking for any new patio area, as long as your restaurant is less than 3,000 square feet. So there are a lot of resources, ordinances, laws that are out there now and that are currently being changed by advocates like myself. So it's an ever-changing landscape. So who knows where we're going to be by the time you hit the ground with your restaurant, if it's right now too. Of course, I can help you with that and decipher those things. But even city of Pasadena, city of Santa Monica, Culver, all of these other cities are kind of going in this direction. City of West Hollywood. So I think to answer your question, let's just take a look at where your property is. And most likely, you don't have to require parking at all.
Okay, but part of that was the neighbors. So if everybody is like seeing at Pija Palace is a good example. That's extremely busy restaurant, super successful. Like I'm saying, when you come in and you're super successful and your neighbors are like their residential streets are filled with this new parking. If you're also trying to like be a part of the community, I don't know, just like your advice about like the community relations and parking.
I think we're never going to agree with everybody on how they see their neighborhoods to be, or with anybody. I went into not to avoid your question, I'm definitely getting to it, but I went and presented at the California Environmental Health Association. So it's basically the state of California Board of Health Departments. Okay, and I presented about the communication and the misunderstandings that we have between operators and enforcement. And how can we bridge those gaps? And just because you disagree with somebody doesn't mean that you can't find common ground with them. And I think that there are always ways to find compromises. Everything is going to be specific to that neighborhood. I mean, if it was the Pija Palace neighborhood, I would just say, come in for dinner. Be nice to your neighbors in any way that you can to support them. I'll use All Day Baby for an example. Again, the neighbors actually they really love being able to walk to a place, and will have their dogs being walked, and it actually provides overall for a much more safe environment when you have storefronts that are open and activated than the latter, which is them being closed. So I think it's all about just letting the communication flow and not being afraid to disagree with people.
Hi, my name is Natalie. I want to ask you about if the rent is like lease negotiable, like during some period of time when you start your business, like you do this repairs, or just maybe like kind of lease vacation for 3 months or 4 months. Can you negotiate the lease with landlord?
Well, you're saying with the broker, can you negotiate the lease?
Yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely should demand that. Yes, certain property owners may not like it, or will try to negotiate with things like improvement money, TI we call it, as a way to kind of barter for free rent. But when you're trying to build a new restaurant at a place that didn't have a restaurant there before,
Yeah.
at minimum they should be giving you at least about a year of rent abatement.
So you can negotiate like a year.
Absolutely.
So it's like for free or
For free.
oh, even for
Mhm.
free. Oh,
Yeah.
while you do this repairs and everything.
While you go through the
and
permit
do the
process.
permits too. Doing the permits too.
Yes, right. To go to the permits, or it all depends on how the lease is structured, or the agreement. I've had instances where leases have been structured where, however long it takes you to build out your entire restaurant, you don't have to pay rent until that period, and then they forego the TI money. So I think there's always ways to kind of broker the deal.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Questions? Any other questions? Okay.
Well, I don't have a lot of time for questions, but I just wanted to say just a few things to you guys. I really appreciate the path that you are on, being here at Institute of Culinary Education. It's admirable that you want to maintain something that has been so special in the lives of so many for centuries, which is to serve people and to create food and beverage and bring that to people and create your own culinary products. Please support independent restaurants. We all need the support in any way that you can, and the way to do that is literally just showing up and maybe just telling people that thank you for the things that you do, for the struggles that you go through, because it's not easy every day. Like I said, we got broken into second time in 10 days, but we have to keep on going through it. And when we hear from our customers that they appreciate us, it goes such a long way. So please keep supporting independent restaurants. Also, Independent Hospitality Coalition membership to our organization is free. And Rosa back there has a QR code. If you're interested, you can literally just hit it with your phone. You can sign up for free. It's really helpful that our membership it grows. We give a lot of helpful information about how you can help the industry. A lot of information about you can know about resources like parking requirements, legislative actions that will be helpful to the industry, specifically independent restaurants. And again, I'm not talking about Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm talking about Pija Palace and Death and Co. or Cha 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 or real independent restaurants. And Naka, exactly. So I mean, she was so happy to hear that she can now put a garden at Naka. She's like, oh my God, I can remove the parking and put a garden. I'm like, yes, you can, Nikki. Finally, we couldn't do that before. So I think we're stronger when we're together. So I ask you please, if you can, to join. Also, we have this merch here, to live and dine in LA. So you can also buy a shirt at the website, or you can always just email us too. I have them in IET headquarters, which is my office, and Little Tokyo. And if you do need our services, you can just find me on Google. I'm there. Rosa will be happy to take your call and set something up for maybe a 20 or 30-minute phone call and kind of give you some words of advice if you get stuck on something, or at least point you in the right direction. I might not be able to take your project because I spent a lot of my time advocating right now. It's my new love, being at the state capitol and advocating for a new bill that we're pushing, AB 2550, which is Small Business Support Act, which is to remove things like you having to install drinking fountains in your restaurant. Things like this just shouldn't exist, or for you to have at least 1,000 square feet of new patio area with not having to install additional restrooms. So to support outdoor dining, AB 2550 is part of that. So, thank you for hearing me, and I look forward to your journeys. And it's been a pleasure being up here.